Okay, so very good morning to you all. Thank you so much for making time this very early morning to join us for this very important webinar that we have dubbed Emerging Threats, Evolving Defenses, Securing Ghana's Financial System Ecosystem Against Fraud. It's a real pleasure to have each and every one of you making this very important appointment with us, and we do not take that for granted. In today's digital age, fraud is no longer a distant threat. It used to be, but it's no more a distant threat. It's a daily, continuous reality. From cyber attacks that are perpetrated by fraudsters using all sorts of sophistication to internal collusion, the financial sector continues to face unprecedented wave of challenges, that demand not just vigilance, but innovation, collaboration, and resilience of the system. Ghana's financial ecosystem is evolving rapidly and daily, and this is usually driven by digital transformation, financial inclusion, and all kinds of reforms by our regulators. But with progress comes exposure, real exposure. Fraudsters are adapting so fast. They're exploiting gaps in governance, in technology, in human behavior. The question now is no more whether fraud will occur. It is more of how prepared we are to detect, to prevent, and to respond to it. This webinar brings together a distinguished panel of experts that we have put together for this purpose from across the financial sector, academia, and the professional services firm. Together, I intend to explore with them key trends in fraud, the troubling rise of staff involvement in We'll also spend some time to dive into the strategies for enhancing internal controls and building a stronger industry partnership in managing digital risk in an increasingly difficult, volatile, and complex environment. Our goal today is not just to discuss the problems. We intend to share real deep insights and challenge some of our key assumptions and spark some very important and actionable solutions that can strengthen the industry and bring fraud to its barest minimum. So I must say, I thank you once again for being here today. Let's engage. Let's learn. Let's challenge the status quo. By the time you leave here, we want you to go out there leading the way to building a more secure financial future for our country. This webinar is organized in collaboration with the Ghana Association of Banks, and we do not take their collaboration lightly, and we thank them so much for being with us today. My name is Julius Aiva. I'm a partner in KPMG, and I lead our forensic advisory business, and I shall be your moderator for today. Without much ado, without going into too much details, I would like to invite the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Banks, Mr. John Ewa, to give us his opening remarks. So, Mr. Ewa, if you're on the call, please, you may unmute and then give us your opening remarks. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius, and good morning to everyone on the call. I'm personally excited to be part of this, and at the Ghana Association of Banks, we also do not take our partnership and the collaboration that we've been having with KPMG on emerging events such as this lightly at all. We see ourselves as thought leaders who can put the key matters affecting financial services on the front burner at all times. And we all agree that fraud has become a topical issue. Those of you on the webinar who have been monitoring the Bank of Ghana fraud report, yes, as an industry, we've made some progress, but to me, the progress has been very slow. The pace of adoption of digital financial services means that as a financial system, we cannot continue to be playing catch up. The only way we can do that is to ensure that we carry everyone who is a user of a financial product, which is deployed on digital platforms, along, because the journey cannot be taken in isolation. They say in fighting fraud, you are as strong as the weakest link in that fight. And yes, as operators of digital financial platforms, banks, the telcos, the fintechs, and what have you, we can do all we can in fortifying the infrastructure that we've invested in, but we need the users of the platforms to also be on the same page with us. And we cannot fight the fraud alone. If we do whatever we have to do and a user becomes negligent in the usage of a financial product online, this whole system is compromised. And that is why we take this as more or less experience sharing, and as Julius mentioned, not to talk about the problems, because as for the problems, we know them, but to see what kind of tools, what kind of strategies that as players we can deploy, what kind of um, um, emerging technologies that we can use, particularly in the area of public awareness and education. As the role that I play here, I also play some key role working with the Center for Financial Literacy Education, Africa. And in our engagement, we've seen that when it comes to usage of financial products, particularly digital financial products, nobody is free from the long hands of the fraudsters. We are all susceptible. You can be a banker and be defrauded. You can be a forensic specialist and be defrauded. You have to always keep your guards. How do you keep your guards if you don't know it? And that is why this forum is so important. And I'm very excited to be part of it, and particularly the people we have assembled to lead the discussions and also to tell us about the thought-provoking tools that we can use and other strategies that we can use together to build a safer, stronger ecosystem. The danger we run if we leave this fight the way it is that we may risk people going back to the old ways of doing things. If you get defrauded once, twice, thrice, next time when you are doing it, to be extra careful, or you may decide, let me walk to the nearest branch to execute the transaction myself. So we are not joking with the approach that we are taking. We want to not leave it even after this webinar or all the other engagements that we are engaged in or we are embarking on. We want the education to be on the front burner. As we sell the product, it must go with the education so that we all are aware. And as players, we also do not have to prioritize profit over security. Because if you lose the confidence and trust in the system, the profits will disappear because the people who will generate that profit will no longer be available to use the product. And that is why I know at the end of this program, we will have some actionable further engagements that we will have to undertake as community of banks, as players within the fintech space, as telcos, as users of digital financial platforms. We all take our share of the security that will be shared here very seriously, execute so we can all trade we can all execute e-commerce, we can all make our payments seamlessly, securely, without any problems. This is not a forum for long speeches, it's a forum for discussions and debate. So I'll end it here because the discussion is actually yet to happen, and that is where the little that I have to share, I will then have the opportunity to also share. I thank you all for joining us on this webinar. We are grateful for your participation. Thank you.
All right. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Ewa. All right. So that's a very, very, very good introduction. So I picked about 3 key points that you made. In fighting fraud, you are as good as your weakest link. Nobody is free. We are all susceptible. How do you keep your guard if you don't know it? And lastly, don't prioritize profits over security. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, wonderful introductory remark. So at this juncture, I would just seize the opportunity to introduce our panel of our panelists quickly, and then we can zoom straight into the discussion. Of course, you just heard Mr. So if my my technical team can just project the slide that shows the profile of each of the panelists quickly, and then we can go through that. But the one who just spoke to us is our one and only Mr. John Ewa, the CEO of the Ghana Association of Banks. He has a proven executive management track record of over 2 decades, driving corporate growth across various functional areas in the financial services sector. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the GAB. Before joining the GAB, he was managing partner of Jawa and Co-Advisors, a financial services consulting firm. He has previously worked with UMB Bank as Chief Executive Officer and held senior leadership positions at GCB Bank as Finance Director, EcoBank Capital as Group Chief Finance Officer, Barclays Bank of Ghana, now ABSA, as a Financial Controller, Chief Finance Officer of UBA Ghana, and Finance Business Partner at Standard Chartered Bank Ghana. John is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA UK, and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Cape Coast and an MBA from the Oxford Institute of International Finance in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. John Ewa. Oh, you can show him some love with, with some emojis, right? Thank you so much. All right, so our second panelist in no particular order is Eric Bobzikabeyo. Eric is a seasoned banker with 15 years of experience in the banking sector. He spent a decade in commercial banking space, serving in diverse roles across banking operations, credit risk management, and parastatal engagements. He is currently a deputy manager at Bank of Ghana, where he functions as an anti-money laundering examiner. In this capacity, he has the Fraud Compliance and Reporting Unit, overseeing fraud compliance and reporting across banks, SDIs, and PSPs, payment service providers. Eric also leads the preparation and publication of the annual banks, SDIs, and PSPs fraud reports, which is the subject of our conversation this morning, which highlights emerging fraud typologies, industry vulnerabilities, and recommended safeguards for financial stability. Eric holds a BSc in Business Administration from Carleton University and an MBA in Finance from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He is currently studying LLB at Wisconsin International University. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Eric Bobzikabeyo. Eric, you are welcome. Please let's show him some love. Third on our list is Dr. Joseph Osei Asante. Dr. Asante is a risk professional and a business development specialist. He has acquired immense exposure and knowledge both locally and internationally within the banking environment. He has a combined experience of no less than 20 years in risk management and credit management. Dr. Asante worked with Amalgamated Bank, currently Bank of Africa, as an SME manager and later rose to the position of head of credit. He also worked at Standard Chartered Bank as head of risk, portfolio monitoring, controls and policy, and later on as cluster head risk processes and controls in West Africa. He was also a member of the Standard Chartered Bank Africa Retail Risk Policy Management Team. He's currently the head of audit and inspection at the ARB Apex Bank. Dr. Asante is a chartered accountant and a full member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Ghana. He holds a PhD in Business Administration and is a full member of the Institute of Directors, Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Joseph Osei Asante. Right. Fourth on our list is Professor Justice Nyegma Bawele. Prof. Bawele is a professor at the Department of Public Administration and Health Services Management at the University of Ghana Business School, Legon. He's the immediate past dean of the University of Ghana Business School. In July 2025, just recently, he delivered a very insightful inaugural lecture on corruption, ethics, and public administration. Prof. Bawele earned his PhD in Development Policy and Management from the Global Development Institute, formerly the Institute of Development Policy and Management at the University of Manchester, UK in 2013. He holds an MPhil in 2016, a BSc in Administration with a major in Public Administration in 2023, and in 2003, rather, I beg your pardon, and a diploma in public administration in 1999, all from the University of Ghana Business School. You can tell that Prof. Bao really loves the University of Ghana Business School. He has taught at all levels of the Ghana's education system. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Teacher Bawele. Teacher Bawele. All right, so next on our list is Ariza Ajwa David. Ariza is a professional with over 14 years of experience in banking industry, specializing in financial security and fraud prevention. She's a manager responsible for overseeing financial crime at Cal Bank PLC. Ariza is a certified fraud examiner, a project manager, and a MasterCard certified professional in cyber intelligence. Ariza, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ariza Ajwa David to this webinar. Last but not least is our own Seun Odeku. Seun, as we affectionately call him, is a partner in KPMG West Africa. He's one of our KPMG Forensic Services business leaders with extensive experience in fraud management, regulatory compliance, investigations, and enterprise risk management. He holds a BSc in Management and Accounting from Obafemi Awolowo University and an MBA from Warwick Business School in the UK. He's a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, UK, and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Oluwaseun Odeku. All right. So thank you very much, our distinguished panelists, and ladies and gentlemen, we thank you also so much for making time with us this very morning. So as you can see, we have put together a very distinguished panel of experts that can delve into some of the key discussion points that we intend to go into today. Without wasting any much time, I would like to go straight into action. So, Mr. Owa, so this question goes to Mr. John Ewa and then Eric Cabello. What are the most prevalent types of fraud currently affecting financial institutions in Ghana, and how are these trends evolving?
Yeah, thank you very much. The fraud typologies are quite a lot, but we have some key ones that within the financial system have become very prevalent in recent times. You have your routine digital and cyber fraud, basically in areas of phishing, mobile money, ATM fraud, online banking. Then we have this mobile money fraud, and we have our own friends, internal fraud, but fraud that is perpetrated by our own people. We have loan and credit fraud, check fraud, which because of the movement to digital payments has now become a little bit less pronounced. But if you go deeper, you will find that a vision, which is a phone call scam, and phishing, which is the email scam, have become very, very much associated with frauds that happen within the banking arena, where people pretend to be working from the banking or the financial system and be sending emails or sending text messages to unsuspecting public, and those who are not careful enough fall prey to some of these. We have spear phishing, which is targeted email scam. We have skimming, basically happening on ATMs. We have SIM swap, mobile number swap. basically happening between a user and maybe an operative within the telco space. And sometimes they would redirect your number such that even if an alert is coming because fraud is happening on your account, it goes to the person who is defrauding you. You have smishing, we have website spoofing, where people mimic a bank's website. If you are not careful and you do not really know your bank's website and how it operates, you may be keying in data into a website which is one being operated by a scam or a fraudster. And we have malware attack. You have a gadget where all of a sudden you find some message on it, a virus attack, and you go and click something, and your whole system is overtaken by a potential fraudster. It's a tall list, but obviously the key ones are some of the ones that I have mentioned, and I'm sure my co-panelists may share ideas on others. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, John. So Eric, so John has highlighted some of the key fraud typologies, and I saw from the Bank of Ghana's recent fraud report that Bank of Ghana had highlighted about 12 different fraud typologies that have bedeviled the three main segments of our financial system: the banks, the BSDIs, and the payment services providers. So Eric, can you please help us understand how these fraud typologies are evolving? I'm sure BOG has a lot of data on this. How are these fraud typologies evolving? If you can please throw a bit more light on that for us.
Thank you very much, Julius, and thank you to all those who are on the call. As you can see from our report, we segregate the report into three parts. So we have a section for the banks, we have a section for the SDIs, that's the specialized deposit taking institutions, and we have a section for the payment service providers. So we see in the banking sector, we see a prevalence of ATM POS card-related transactions or fraud. In addition to what Mr. Iwa has mentioned, and this card-related fraud mostly has to do with card not present, suggesting that card details may have been compromised during online transactions, making them vulnerable to unauthorized use. In the SDI sector, we see a prevalence of cash suppression in that sector, and that is also a huge concern to us. And when we go to the PSP side, we see a lot of social engineering schemes which are deployed by these fraudsters. But to put in context, we've seen a significant drop in the overall incidents of fraud. We saw in the 2024 report a 26% reduction in the total number of fraud cases as compared to 2023. This is an indication that some internal control measures that are put in place are really working. Mr. Ewa mentioned earlier that it's not a one-way thing. We need to also look at the customers. If the customers are not able to utilize these applications or utilize their banking applications very well, then they form or they serve as the weakest link. And so we need to also look at prioritizing our sensitization and education drive to our customers. Thank you very much.
So Ariza, so when you look into the 2024 reports, there is an increase in cases of forgery and identity theft, but in terms of cyber and cash-related fraud, there was some decrease compared to 2023. What do you think this shift reveals about how fraudsters are evolving and how financial institutions should adjust their defenses accordingly?
Thank you, Julius. Well, the 2024 fraud report reveals something profound, and that is fraudsters are no longer just hacking systems, they are hacking people. This tells us that criminals are choosing the path of least resistance. I mean, why spend days breaching a secured firewall when you can forge a document or manipulate human judgment to gain access. And it also exposes 3 realities we can't ignore. The first being that our human-dependent processes remain our weakest link. The second being that fraudsters are adapting faster than our defenses. And the third is that fraudsters are becoming smarter, but not necessarily more technical. For institutions, this means that our defenses need to be more dynamic, not reactive. Take forgery, for instance, a clone check. We have seen fakes that have been so perfectly replicated, like signatures, watermarks, that even trained staff miss them. When we are able to integrate AI into manual checks, these slips can be caught early because it will help detect micro-level inconsistencies like ink density shift or serial mismatches, which are all beyond human sight. Now, when we combine that with human judgment, it forms a very powerful dual defense. When we take that for in identity theft, for instance, 3 measures remain critical. The first is that prompt remediations of system vulnerabilities on platform hosting critical systems is something that should be dear to all institutions. In addition, implementing robust multi-factor authentications should be the way to go. Now we use passwords, PINs, OTPs. We can look at the biometric side of it, the live accesses of the biometric. And thirdly, when we address insider threats through the combination of privilege access management and segregation of duties, ensuring that no individual has total control or access, it will help to reduce internal compromises on related subjects or issues. So Julius, while the battlefield may have shifted from code to cognition, our strongest shield still remain that we need to be informed, we need to be vigilant, and most importantly, we have to technologically empower our institutions in the fight of these incidents that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariza. So I heard you speak about AI. I heard you speak about multi-factor authentication. So, it makes me understand that technology plays a very, very important role when it comes to fraud prevention detection. Maybe let me get these thoughts from Eric. I'm very much aware. So, in Ghana, we rolled out the Ghana card. When someone walks, so I'm trying to focus the conversation on identity theft. When someone walks into a bank, for instance, with a Ghana card, how are the banks, ensuring that they are authenticating the identity of the one that holds the Ghana card properly? Because I know there is database at the NIA for fingerprint assessments at the bank and all that. Are the banks doing that? I mean, just a little focus on that in terms of identity theft. If Eric can respond to that for us quickly.
Yes, Julius. We came out with a directive some time ago that banks are required to verify the Ghana card of their customers. The first one was for them to update the records of their customers with the Ghana card, because prior to the Ghana card, people were using different means of identification to open accounts. Now, with the coming into force of the Ghana card, we requested that all banks and SDIs should update their customer information with the bank card. Now, it is very important for us to know that when you go into the banking hall to perform a transaction, the banks are supposed to verify you, the one who is doing the transaction. And also, if it's a third party, they are supposed to verify the person. And that is why we requested all the banks to acquire the verification devices so that they can appropriately verify their customers to avoid this issue of identity theft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you so much. So it's important that that is taken very, very seriously, because from the fraud report, it appears that the fraud incidents when it comes to document forgery and identity theft, has seen some very significant increase compared to 2023. Dr. Asante, let's now focus the conversation on RCBs, rural and community banks. How do you see fraud trends differing, right, amongst banks, SDIs, and PSPs, or payment service providers? Maybe you can focus your conversation on how the fraud typologies look like when we come to rural and community banks. Dr. Asante, if you may, please. Okay, Dr. Asante, if you are talking, you are muted, so you can please unmute. Okay, perfect.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to the organizers of this program. Good morning to the panelists that are here, and good morning to our colleagues that are also participating in this particular webinar. I sent some few slides, but in the absence of the showing of these slides, I would just go straight and talk about what is happening. Just like any other financial space, the rural and community banking space has not been left behind when it comes to issues of fraud. We also experience these ones, but we have our own typology, we have our own characteristics. And so let me just share a few of them, the various types that we see here. And I think some of my earlier colleagues have also mentioned them in passing. So we have this cash suppression. Cash suppression is the first and foremost. It's historic, and it's still there today. It's legendary, it's still there today. It has not stopped, and it's likely to still be there for a very long time, for as long as we take certain key steps to control it. And so this is where a mobile banker does not report or underreports his or her collections for the day. As human as we are, you can never determine who can be the most truthful and honest. Mobile bankers go into the field, they collect deposits. And human beings as we are, we all have needs. We all have needs and we all have wants. There are times that life is a bit telling on human beings. And as such, they are tempted, of course. They are tempted. The temptation, whether it's from the devil or it's from wherever I can't tell, but they are tempted to tap into the kind of deposits. This particular fraud is very prevalent within the rural and community space. A number of banks have taken certain steps, a number of banks being very much aware. Banks that have been hit significantly continue to take certain steps by deploying some form of technology, some form of controls to make sure that this particular fraud is minimized. And I'll talk about some of the controls that are being taken by some of these banks. Then the second one is fraudulent account transfers. This occurs where a staff takes advantage of a dormant account, for instance, and a diseased account, either a dormant or diseased account, and transfers funds to others for withdrawal. It happens, and the reason why it happens, I'll discuss some of these things. And let me just give an example. An example is where a case that we come across several cases, but a case is where you have a manager, for instance. A manager at some point in time goes to one of the officers and tells the officer, you know what, I have a problem with my systems. I'm unable to access my system. And so can I use your station, your workstation, to do a few things whilst I get my system put in place. So the officer, trusting and believing the manager very well, grants access to the manager. The manager sits by the workstation, and what he does is that he goes in and activates a dormant account, and then changes the mandate, and replaces the mandate with his account over there. The manager replaces it with his account over there, and then authorizes it because you know when he does it, it has to be authorized, but it has to be authorized by the money at the manager's station. So after changing the mandate, he leaves the station, he leaves the workstation for the officer, goes back to his, and then authorizes it. He authorizes it, and then what happens is that with time, what he does is that he's able to push funds from the dormant account into his own account. He uses Ghana Pay, for instance, to push money transfer money from that replaced account of his in the dormant account. He moves money uses Ghana Pay to move money into his account, and then later on moves this money to other places. So you are coming across similar types of fraud in some of these banks, which we classify as fraudulent account transfers, and the need to begin to take certain key steps, because this has been done by a staff, it's been done by insider, by a staff, and I said, when you take a look at the numbers, it tells you that the staff involvement in some of these fraudulent activities is significant, and we, even though it might be reducing, it is still a number that we need to deal with it. Then you have the third one being the mobile money fraud. These are the three common ones that are very, very prevalent in the rural and community banking sector. Mobile money fraud, being fraudulent mobile money withdrawals by mobile money scammers. Now, let me talk about some of the key things that we need to do. The staff, when you take a look at the Bank of Ghana's report.
So
yes.
Dr. Asante, so we will delve into some of the key steps that need to be taken in subsequent portions of the discussion. So maybe if you can hold your horse for now. I can see you're very passionate about this topic, and we like that fire. So please just hold that fire a little. When we get into in that segment of the discussion, you please give us your thoughts on that. Thank you so much. Very, very insightful. So you mentioned three key things: fraudulent account transfer, dormant, that people take advantage of dormant accounts, and then mobile money fraud. And it appears that in the RCB space, there is a significant issue with staff involvement when it comes to this fraudulent activity. So I'm very much excited to hear from you, how the banks are taking steps to mitigate or to reduce these incidences. So Sean, our partner from West Africa, KPMG. Sean, so you've heard all the discussions around the fraud typologies in Ghana, how that is evolving. I want you to look at that within the context of Nigeria and even beyond. So from your perspective, what are the differences and similarities between the fraud trends as you see it, globally, and Nigeria, and of course, as highlighted in our Ghana 2024 fraud report? Sean, please.
All right. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So maybe Julius, to speak to that, I think if I look at Nigeria specifically, one of the things maybe just picking up from the conversations, one of the things I see is that within the Nigerian financial system space, a lot of there's been a cashless policy drive by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And what you see with that is there are certain instrument types, traditional instrument types like checks, whose use has kind of dropped significantly, and also the fraud typologies that come with those particular payment instrument types have also declined significantly. So in creating a cashless economy, one of the biggest, if you look at our financial ecosystem, the fintechs play a very significant part in ensuring financial inclusion, in driving efficiency of the financial process. And that with that also comes velocity of money, significant speed of money. And so what we've seen is, again, similar to what everybody has said, human beings remain the weakest point. But just a slight difference in terms of the fraud type in itself. We still see, I think the most material fraud types we see in the banking sector is coming from sophisticated cyber acts on the banks themselves, and which would then, give rise to those hackers and bad actors taking over a few accounts or even internal accounts, or just bypassing the entire payment system, creating a one-sided transaction where they're able to then monetize it on the other side using a lot of spurious accounts. Now, with the fintech, with the fintechs have done a significant job in ensuring efficiency of payment in Nigeria. But one of the things we've also seen is that there are control gaps around account opening, KYC. There are control gaps around where we have the agency banking in Nigeria, where people can easily do cash in and cash out transactions. That particular weakness, right, has also led to ease of monetization. So when the fraud happens within the banking context, the bad actors are able to monetize that fraud, either moving them out through the agency banking space, or also through a lot of the API connections that we have in the banking space, where they're easily able to buy crypto. We all know that the crypto space it's been regulated, but there's still some level of opaqueness that is in that space, and then they're able to leverage the speed of that money movement and move the funds out. So I think it's not, I would look at it from the principal side of it. It's not very different from what we're seeing in Ghana. But when we look at the, I would say the machinery that we're seeing in Nigeria, I think a lot of it is really fraudsters focusing on beating the payment system by hacking the system, moving significant volumes of funds, and then leveraging the weak, I would say, the weak controls around the agency banking system. So it's a very, very tough balancing act that the central bank has to do between, and the drive for financial inclusion and opening up the ease of account opening, the ease of banking transactions at a rural level, at the market level, and also tightening those controls. So, and I'm sure if you're following, you see that the CBN, I think this week, they've passed a few regulations where they have tried to tighten that monetization part of the fraud, because it's one thing to attempt the fraud, it's another thing to enjoy the benefit of it by monetizing it. So what the CBN is focusing on in Nigeria now is trying to just put a stopgap in that monetization part of it. Agents in Nigeria, be proud to now they could have POSs, they could be agent for several banks. So the central bank has now said you can only represent one bank, meaning that you can only have one point of sale terminal that you can use to withdraw cash. They've also tried to say there's a limit to what amount of cash you can do. And also they are thinking of geo-tagging those devices. So once you go outside of a certain jurisdiction, where you are geotagged to, maybe, for example, if you're in a particular place in Accra, once you go, 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers outside of that particular geolocation, then the device stops working. So, but overall, I think if you look at it globally, what we're seeing is also the fraud typologies are relying on human behavior, because financial controls across the banking systems are improving. So you need that weak link, which is to rely on human behavior, WhatsApp fraud, sending distress messages with the use of AI. You see a lot of, funny, people can replicate your voice, your look, those things can force people to divulge what they should not divulge, and therefore succumb to the fraudster.
So thank you very much. So from what I gleaned from the conversation that you just gave us, I see a lot of similarities between the typologies that we see here in Ghana and then in Nigeria. It's instructive to note, maybe later I may just put this statistic, out, that in Ghana, when it came to cyber and email fraud, in 2023, the value at risk when it came to cyber and email fraud was about 10 million Ghana cedi. In 2024, there was a significant reduction in that. Well, this is below 1 million. So it means that the banks are doing something right and have become a bit more responsive to their to cyber security threats and attacks. So kudos to the banks. We need to do more on that. Okay, so I would like us to take the conversation from the trends, the typologies that we've just discussed, and focus it on this big issue that Dr. Asante also significantly highlighted, and which Shane also significantly highlighted as one of the key things in Nigeria: staff involvement in fraud cases. When you read the Ghana Bank of Ghana fraud reports, right? There was a 33 for banks specifically. There was a 33% increase in the number of staff involvement in fraud cases. The 2024 number was 365, compared to 2023 of 274. And out of that, about 155, staff were dismissed. So this poses a very significant, risk to the financial sector. What I want us to look at is, I'm going to start first of all with Prof. Bawile, Teacher Bawile. He likes to be called Teacher Bawile. So Prof. Bawile, from your perspective, how does ethical culture and leadership impact fraud prevention in financial institutions as reflected in the report? Can you please share your perspective with us? How does ethical leadership impact fraud prevention in financial institutions?
Right. Thank you. Julius. And I'm grateful to KPMG for inviting me to be part of this conversation. It's been my desire after my inaugural lecture to keep talking about this. So I'm happy that this opportunity is presented for me to share a few perspectives. I read the report and I've listened to the conversations that we have been having for about 40 minutes now. And it's completely consistent with what our research has shown here at the University of Ghana. Personally, I have been involved in surveying students and getting a sense of students' behavior over time. And I've done this consistently for a long time. And one thing that is very clear from these surveys, together with the conversation today, is that there's a general decline, if you like, degeneration of the morality of our society, not least in Ghana or in Nigeria, but across the continent of Africa. I should say that globally it's the case, but we actually at a higher risk because of the level of impunity that can happen here because of the weak systems that we operate across places. So you would find actually that younger people are becoming more daring. They are becoming more adventurous. They have become soft life seekers. They have become showmen, if you like. They want to show off wealth and stuff like that. And once these variables come into contact with weak oversights, weak influence, and weak systems, then you would experience the kind of things that you have been sharing with us. In my own work, I have sought to investigate how leadership impacts on ethical behavior. And at all times, you are getting, in some cases, up to about 7 or 10% percentage increase in behavior of subordinates if they knew that their bosses were behaving or misbehaving within a particular context. And so the question about how leadership can impact these are things that we need to look at. I haven't worked in the bank yet, but we train students who work in banks. And when I have looked at the culture of banks, you seek to give your people comfort. You want them to be properly taken care of. You want them to dress nicely, and therefore, so that they are able to project a certain brand identity for the financial institutions. That becomes attractive to young people. So in the universities, if you ask all business administration, accounting, finance, HR students where they want to work, even students who are not studying business, a significant number tells you they want to work in the bank. And why? Because they are attracted to the culture of the banks. Now, when they get into the banks, we haven't done a good work of socialization. And here I'm talking about the extent to which we are able to help young people who are joining financial institutions to understand that it takes a while for you to build your reputation in the system and for you to be able to attract all the perks that come with the office. And so you would find that a significant number of them haven't also been exposed to the skill sets in manipulating IT related things, then carry that into the workspace. So several variables, when they come into contact with themselves, then expose the financial institution. And I think that one of the things that I don't hear in Ghana, maybe it happens, is the extent to which leadership gets sanctioned when they misbehave. Now, is it known within the financial institution, for example, that Mr. X misbehaved and was sanctioned and all of that? And within the banking space, are these pieces of information available so as to communicate a certain level of culture? Now, if young people, and I guess that a lot of your staff are young people these days, if young people up to 30, 35 cannot see any consequences resulting from bad behavior, they usually assume that nothing happens, and so they go ahead and do that. So the culture of socialization, properly bringing young people up, training them into, and I should say, Julius, the banking sector is so tough on deadlines, benchmarks, technical work, and all of that. And oftentimes, because I've also been associated with the National Banking College, oftentimes when training programs are even made available, not a lot of people are able to make time to attend. And you will be tired if you made it a virtual program. They put on the system whilst they are working because somebody else is chasing them to meet a deadline and all of that. So training, socialization has become something that I think we haven't done too well at, which is actually exposing a lot of young people with a erroneous impression that they can get away with wrong. And number two, leadership. And I know that there's a lot of very good mentorship systems in financial institutions, but it looks to me that a little bit of it hasn't shown what we can do. If you have worked for 20 years, 30 years in a bank, and because of that, you drive the latest model of vehicle, how is that communicated to young people who are just joining? And as you all said, you can build the most robust financial, technical security systems. If the thief accountant was with you, and here I said thief accountant was with you when you were designing that system, and that thief accountant remains a thief accountant, your system is as vulnerable as if it wasn't actually designed. So I think that this conversation, the data that we have should actually engineer a lot of leadership changes, and more leaders must take responsibility for grooming young people, create a social system that allow young people to learn, and for them to know that, of course, there will always be the outliers, those that would, and my study has shown that even if we were to say to young people that if you were caught in a particular unethical behavior, you could get jailed for years, at least 13% of the people still said they will get engaged in it. So what it means is that this will continue to stay with us. And therefore, the banks must actually get prepared to deal with after events, mop-up activity or remedial actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Bawile. Wow. So young people are not afraid of prison sentence. 13% of them think or would still perpetrate fraud even if it was going to result in a prison sentence. Yeah, I mean, you made some very important points. The extent to which that leadership gets sanctioned, when there's an issue of misbehavior or fraud. The targets, sometimes the targets that are given to people in the bank can be very, very, very hefty, puts a lot of pressure on them. How are they being trained? How are they being socialized? Are there, good mentorship programs, grooming programs that are there, to train, some of these people to ensure that the ethical
Julius,
culture that the bank has.
Yes, Julius, if I may just add, I'm sure that so that you can pick it from there.
Please go ahead. Yes.
I mean, our results also show that when people know that they get involved in unethical behavior, someone will speak on their behalf to get them out. That also actually shot up the potential, or if you have the propensity to be corrupt or to be unethical. So if I have a big man who can speak for me, if somebody will beg for me, if my pastor will beg for me, then a lot more people will get engaged in that. So again, when we pick up people who are misbehaving in the banks, do we have big bosses, for example, making intervention and speaking on behalf of young people and all of that? So these are a few variables that whilst the banks prepare to deal with the issue, you want to pay particular attention to.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. So Ariza, Prof, were you going to make another point, or maybe I'll give you another chance later?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, sure. So Ariza, so let's look at the fraud report, right? What do you think is driving the rise in staff-related fraud? What do you think, from your perspective? What do you think is driving the rise in staff-related fraud? I think probably, might have highlighted a few, but we want to hear you as well, your perspectives on it.
Okay, well, Julius, thanks. I think the good old fraud triangle reminds us that for fraud to occur, 3 elements have to be aligned: pressure, opportunity, rationalization. Prof has mentioned a lot about pressure. Most employees, with regards to most employees, the pressure hasn't changed. People are dealing with financial stress, peer pressure from your colleagues, and even from your family's friends, the rising cost of living, and performance expectations. But what is changing, though, is the increase of opportunity, the increase in rationalization on the side of that triangle. Whilst we are digitalizing most of our processes, we realize that new loopholes or gaps are appearing. And because of that, we're also seeing a lot of lack of segregation of duties. And in some cases too, the controls are not quite catching up with the technology that we are putting out there. And when that happens, somebody will take the opportunity and rationalize that, oh, I'm just borrowing some money, or, well, the company owes me, so I deserve this amount or percentage, or it's harmless, or everyone is doing it. And sadly, we see that this kind of mindset is affecting the trust in the ecosystem. Some customers and even business owners are still hesitant about going full digital because they are afraid that insider manipulation or data compromise would rip them off of their hard-earned living. And at the end of it, the rise in staff-related fraud is not just about compliance, a compliance issue. It is stemming from trust. The trust is quickly or easily eroding. And it's high time we start building that trust, because if we don't build it by tightening our digital controls and making ethical or ethics and accountability part of our operations, not just in our policies, we stand a chance of losing a good chunk of people out there who have kept their monies out there because they are afraid that once they bring it on board, they'll lose it. So it's something that we have to look at and then see how best we can get it done with. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ariza. I mean, you also made a very good point around how controls within financial institutions are lagging behind when it comes to, you know, the rapid change in technology. You know, we've just mentioned from some of the typologies that, you know, fraudsters are deploying all kinds of technology, deepfakes, AI, you know, to perpetrate, you know, high levels of fraud. So if a financial institution's controls are not up to date, you know, to mitigate or to prevent the occurrence of these frauds, I mean, you are just going to lie flat when some of these you know, activities are perpetrated by these fraudsters. Dr. Asante, so Ariza has just given us some of the key things that are driving staff-related fraud in the financial institutions. What I want you to touch on for us is, how is that affecting public trust in the reputation of Ghana's financial institutions? So please touch on public trust and reputation for us. Oh,
okay. So thank you.
So, Ms. Ewa, I'll come to you quickly. Let
I just
finish,
wanted,
and then I'll come to you quickly.
I just wanted, I mean, maybe Prof can then add mine to his discussion on the public trust. I wanted to, on the back of what has already been discussed around the staff involvement, there is an angle that, in my view, we have not really explored deeper. That is getting the customer well educated. For the frauds, particularly for internal frauds that have had staff complicity, you find that in a lot of the instances, it's been done because of complicity of the account owner or of the customer. So we need to really deepen the education on the end of at the end of the end user. There are still customers who are leaving their checkbooks with bank staff because of familiarity. Oh, you know, and they've signed the checkbooks and left with the bank staff. Oh, when I'm making payment, I'll call you, and then you write 10,000. I've signed, and all of a sudden, the bank staff sees this opportunity, and there is some level of financial crisis which did not exist before. He goes through, and all of a sudden, he has a quick avenue to execute that fraudulent activity. So, in my view, in really addressing the staff complicity, we have to work deeply on the customer side as well. Again, there's another thing we have not done in the past, which banks have started doing, which is not just sacking or terminating the appointment of people who perpetuate fraudulent activities within the banking system, particular staff, but going the extra mile of having them prosecuted. And I'm seeing this in recent occurrences where banks are taking their own staff to the court system. There are bank staff who have been jailed. The next step is, how do we popularize these kind of convictions so that they serve as warning signs or signposts to any staff who may attempt to engage in any kind of fraudulent activity which will bring the financial system into disrepute. Banks are moving away from shielding to now exposing. Hitherto, because of brand protection, we don't want our brand to be associated with fraud. If you go to the court, the media will pick it up, and then our brand will be in the news. But now we are taking the bull by the horn. We are prosecuting and we are jailing. And the next step is to popularize it. And I thought I will highlight that before Prof comes in with the trust issue.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wad. I think that's those are very important points that you made that would have slipped through. I'll give you the chance to let us know what the GAB is doing within the space to mitigate against the risk of fraud. Immediately after Dr. Asante comes in with a question on how staff-related fraud is affecting public trust and the reputation of Ghana financial. I'll give you the chance to touch on that briefly. So, Dr. Asante, please, you may come in at this point.
Okay, so thank you very much, Julius. There are times that some of us have some points to make, but we have to hold on because the discussions and each subject matters run across all of us, and it would have been also nice to also share some view on some of these things. But let me quickly share some quick points on on the issue of staff involvement, then I move into that of the public trust. The staff involvement that I was talking about, yes, the discussions at this level is quite exciting and it's good to know. But the questions that we want to ask yourself for us to ponder on are these. The first one is about the onboarding process, the staff on the onboarding process, the recruitment of staff, the kind of background checks that we do. To what extent are we, in terms of financial institutions, to what extent do we wait for the police reports to come? Do we wait for the clearance to come? The extent of level of our due diligence checks on staff that are coming on board is a questionable matter that financial institutions should spend more time to tackle. Again, the second one is on the family-based relationships that we bring our staff on. This is an uncle of this person. This is the nephew of this one. This is whatever. And so the staff comes in and already he's already branded in a certain way. And if you're not very careful, he does whatever that he wants to do, and it becomes a challenge when you're putting that person in order. The third one, still on the staff onboarding, is about the tone at the top. The tone at the top, you ask yourself, how involved are management level? Sometimes you have management people also being involved. How involved? What are their practices? What do they do? The case that I was talking about, involved a manager who had gone to do that kind of thing. And so you have, sometimes they are all involved. So these are some of the thoughts that I just wanted to, there can be more. In fact, one of them was the lack of tough penal measures to deal with these staff involvement. Now let me go to the issue of public trust. Yes, the public trust. The first point that I want to highlight is that now when you go into the communities watch the lifestyles. They watch the lifestyles of these bankers. They want to see how they conduct themselves in this place. And that goes a long way to build the trust that they have in the SDI within their community. They look at the lifestyles. So bankers, financially, SDI staff need to be watchful of their lifestyles. Today he's using this car, the next morning, the next 2-3 months, he's using another car. We're not saying no, you don't buy a car, but sometimes the issues of sources of funds and sources of funds comes into play. And that goes a long way to either strengthen the public trust. The public trust is largely also linked to the lifestyle. The second one, strong SDI brands. The strong SDI brands. The SDIs that have strong SDIs still have good and strong level of confidence and trust, irrespective of whatever happens. The strong. And so the key thing is to build a very strong. There's no Mensa in any house. There's no Mensa in any house. And so definitely you have financial institutions that have some of these things. And so build your strong brand so that even if there are these minor fraudulent things, it still doesn't deteriorate your brand. So the strong brands have enough trust. The third one is about the kind of legal actions. When they begin to see that actions are being taken on corporates, etc., the trust gets rebuilt. And so take legal actions. The fourth one is about how the SDI communicates to the public anytime there are fraudulent cases. There are some banks that will come out clearly and indicate exactly what has happened and the kind of actions that they have taken. It reposes enough confidence into the customer phone. And the more that communication line is linked, the more it enhances the brand. There are banks that will shield some of these things. And the more you shield some of these things, the more the confidence level continues to come down. Let me just hold on here and give opportunity for others to also talk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Asante. Those were very, very insightful points that you just put out there. To our attendees, please feel free and post your questions. There'll be a time for question and answers. Feel free to post your questions in the chat, or even if you want to speak when we get to the section on question and answers, we'll unmute you for you to ask your question. So please note your questions down. There will be enough time for question and answer. Then to the panelists, in case there's a question posed to a particular panelist, that you want to make a direct comment on, please just raise your hand and you can come in immediately after that. Okay, so Ms. Ewa, so you spoke about two key things that you believe that banks need to do to really mitigate this risk of staff-related fraud. You spoke about taking serious legal action against staff beyond dismissals, and then also popularizing those convictions or those judgments. Beyond that, what else or what other steps do you think banks have to take, or what is the Ghana Association of Banks doing to mitigate this risk of staff involvement in fraud? I want to hear your thoughts on that, and then I'll come to Eric to also give us what from the BOG side.
All right. Thank you very much. Working with the Chartered Institute of Bankers and with BOG, we have introduced the yearly certification program on ethics and business conduct, which is something that as practitioners, every bank staff will have to go through and be certified on yearly basis on how to conduct yourself as a staff. Because sometimes upon investigation, you find that yes, you find a complicity with an internal staff, but there is no financial benefit to the staff. And then what is the key driver? You find either negligence because of lack of awareness. So we've decided to focus on educating staff to isolate the incidents of those who perhaps may have the tendency to defraud, but by also removing the opportunistic avenues, by educating those who do not have that tendency, but because of some exploitations within the system, they become complicit or they become exploited in a way, like the example that was used by our friend from the ARB Apex Bank. So if a staff is very much aware, then, and he doesn't have the tendency, the fraud tendency, then we'll be protecting that staff from getting into that arena. So that is a protective mechanism. The other one is we are also sharing a lot more data. Hitherto, a bank is defrauded in a certain modus operandi by a staff. That mode of operating the fraud mechanism is only kept to that bank. So you will find that a similar fraud is happening in another bank by staff, and nobody else is aware. But now we have various communities within the association where information on fraud is shared. Just 2 days ago, we now do not wait for Bank of Ghana to issue the fraud report. We issue our own fraud report to the industry. Just yesterday, we issued our fraud report up to August. The essence of doing that is to make fraud management an upfront management tool. It doesn't become a reactive tool, but something that we use to circulate to the industry so that they are aware of the key fraud trends that we have started experiencing. And then if there are patches that must be done to systems, new tools that must be implemented, then the community of banks can then zoom in and do that. Of course, I talked about customer education because a very well-educated customer is very difficult to defraud, whether you are internal staff or you are fraudulent from a person from outside. And again, controls have been lagging, as has been said before. So Bank of Ghana occasionally is also coming out with releases on what we have to do. You are aware of the FIXOP, the Financial Industry Securities Operating Center. So now at Bank of Ghana, the industry is able to receive alerts directly from the central bank telling us, hey, there's this attempt or there's this issue going on. Can you take a quick look? So we are being more proactive than reactive because we've seen that investing in proactive tools yield a lot better results than detective tools. Detection is good when your fraud has been successful. How are you able to use your internal systems to detect the fraud? But we are focusing a lot more on the tools that will enable us to stop the fraud from happening. I would like to make a last comment on the staff onboarding process. To be honest with you, we've had extensive debate on this. As it is now, even police checks, if you ask me, it's basically just a tick box. If you are a fraudster and you have been arrested and you have not been convicted, you are not in police database in Ghana. You can go through the police test and pass, and you begin working in the bank. So there are a lot more institutional structural changes that we must push as an industry, so that if somebody goes through prosecution and maybe there's settlement along the line and doesn't get convicted in a way, it still gets onto the database. Of course, the central bank keeps log of all staff of banks who have been sanctioned in one way or the other. So if you are recruiting a staff into your bank, you do a clearance check at the central bank. You check against that database to ensure that we are not recycling fraudsters from one bank to another bank. So that tool is there. But we need the police check to be a central point of contact where if someone has really perpetrated fraud and in one way or the other has either settled along the way or the case fizzled out, the bank never pursued or the financial institution never pursued, that case does not get disappeared. At least there's a flag on the person that this person has gone through this process. We do not know what the ultimate outcome is, so that the bank that is recruiting can be forewarned. When I was at the bank side, we were only getting these kind of alerts in terms of checks with the central bank for only key man recruitment, like key employees. But now, even at entry level, you need clearance from Financial Stability Department before, in addition to the police check, before you can recruit. I'll talk a little about what Prof said about the general decline in moral standards in the country. And I will speak on Ghana because Ghana is what I know. And it is something that we need officialdom to also spend some time on. And we begin working, if we have lost this generation, begin working on the next generation from primary school, teaching people this kind of moral hazards along the way. That if you see somebody in a car, it is not the end of the world. You don't know how much debt he's sitting on. You don't know what problems he's going through. And diligent lifestyle is more valuable than a lifestyle that is hollow but that outwardly beautiful. We need to get this message sunk in at the toddler level and gradually work our way all the way levels up to the university before they get into employment. I can't talk much about family-based relationships and recruitment within the banking system. It is possible, it is there, but it is not pervasive. And it is not something that, in my view, may be a key driver of fraudulent practice. The key ones have been negligent practice. The young people of today have become so disconnected. When I say disconnected, they are working and they are on their phone. So it is very easy for them to be deceived to do something because their focus is on Instagram, a lifestyle they are watching on the phone whilst they are still processing a financial transaction. It's very easy to be distracted, and when you get distracted, a fraudster can easily penetrate, and you may not financially benefit, but you become a conduit for fraudulent activity to happen. So at the industry level, there are various things that we are doing: education, the ethics and business conduct certification, and we are helping the banks, particularly on the onboarding processes, working with the police service to see how best we can fine-tune the database to include capture a lot more people than presently it captures. But there are other ones. I talked about the industry data sharing, which is also helping us to prevent fraud from migrating from Bank A to Bank B.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ewa. So Eric, before you come in, let me give Professor Bawile the chance to make a quick comment before you come.
Yes.
Prof, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Julius, and thanks, Eric, for your patience. So I wanted to make an analogy, and it picks up from where Mr. Ewa just left. I'm not sure how many of us would be happy to go and board an aircraft if we knew that these were the number of accidents that exist, as we just reported in this banking fraud reports, and we don't usually see a lot of accidents in the aircraft industry because of the level of scrutiny that goes on. In fact, in terms of the employment regime for airline staff, the level of scrutiny is just unbearable. In fact, as we speak now, I am wondering whether any bank in Ghana does a social media profiling of their staff before they are recruited. But today, if you want to know who this individual is, all you need to do is to do a social media profile of this individual, check their online footprint, and it will tell you whether this person has the potential to be a fraud or not. Is this person engaging in betting? Is this person involved in some gambling of a sort? Do they celebrate people who go out who get away with crime? What is their total disposition towards wrong things reported? What do they comment on? Do they support weird political behaviors and all of that? Do they jump at defending people who are caught for doing the wrong things? These are social media profiles that would give any banking institution that wants to get the right people to employ extensive data to profile from. And I would be really, really sad if I knew, for example, that Julius, you were like this on social media and you were the one who was made my relationship manager. I'm going to be exposing myself to you. And that takes me to the second and third point that have been made already, but just to reiterate them. Authority levels and authority relationships. So, Julius, you are my boss. And you call me a number of times to tell me to do things that don't follow the procedures that have been established in the bank. And you are calling me to do so because it is something that concerns you or somebody that you know. What you have just done is to let a young man down, to say that when it is about the big people, and here we're talking about authority leadership and how they can influence, that's a clear signal to a younger person who just joined the industry that this is allowed. So it's important that leadership watches the character, the behavior, the way they relate, use of authority, and all of that. And that takes me to my last point here quickly, so that I'll let Eric come in. The banking industry uses the customer relationship model. Now, when I started as the dean of the business school, I got almost like a preferential treatment if I went to any bank because they know me. All right, so they would typically call me, so please do this for Prof and all of that. And I get a sense that when that happens, there's the tendency for the actors within the service value chain to let down their scrutiny because they are dealing with, quote, Professor Baole, dean of business school. Now, and that also tells me the other point, which is that the level of familiarity that customers get with their relationship managers and the desire to stand their grounds when a customer is not doing the right thing, and the potential that this customer could call a senior officer and say, look, can you imagine that I came to the bank and they asked me to do thumbprint or something and all of that. Now, these are cultural practices that actually defy the rules that we have set, which are actually time tested to help us prevent fraud within the banking sector. So a little bit of these ones are very important, and I hope that the industry, players would take critical look at these and ensure that in the banking halls, in the branches, officers are using the authority well. When there's a customer who comes to say they have been disrespected, we should investigate what the disrespect was about. Was he being asked to provide adequate information? Was he being protected actually when he felt that was uncomfortable? Was he going through processes that took a longer time to ensure that the right things was done? And then he said, "Look, you are delaying me." What is the process of investigating those complaints, and how do we not communicate to frontline officers that you have to do the right things, even if it will mean taking a longer, more time, and how to deal with clients when they come to you? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you very, very much. So what it means is that sometimes, the processes that the banks go through may be very daunting and difficult, but are for the bank's own good, especially when it comes to the prevention of fraud. So, Prof. Barley, thank you. Eric, can you please share with us quickly, briefly, in a few sentences, right? Because we are currently behind time, what BOG is doing to mitigate against this staff-related fraud?
Thank you very much, Julius. On the issue of prosecution of staff, we are very happy with that move. I mean, we get happy when we see this prosecution of staff in the media, and that should serve as a deterrent to other staff. So right from the executive management down to the security, every staff that has been involved in fraud should be prosecuted. And then we can take it to the next level where we look at even recovering whatever has been stolen from the institution. Now, what BOG has been doing so far, we have had several engagements with Ghana Association of Banks. And as Mr. John Ewa mentioned, we've had several engagements, and we are trying to have a collective response across the industry to see how best we can mitigate these fraud incidents. We've also had engagements with the ARB Apex Bank. And for the past 2 years, we've been having some discussions with the rural banks in terms of their cash suppression cases. We've had online meetings with some of the rural banks that recorded very high case of cash suppression. And even this year, we went onto the field, we went to these rural banks just to really understand or ascertain whether whatever internal controls that are being implemented, whether they are working right, and also to provide them with some recommendations. Basically, we realize that these are systematic issues, and we believe that more technology should be deployed in the area of mobile bankers and then SUSU collectors. And we also have the case of trust, where the customers trust these mobile bankers and SUSU collectors to the point that they even give out their passbooks to them, and a whole lot. And then we also are pushing, or we require that the background checks should be done. I mean, now we go ahead to even sanction institutions who do not adequately do background checks. And one of the background checks is to run the names through the database at the Bank of Ghana. Now we have all the staff who have been disengaged from the banks in the database. So once you are recruiting or you are hiring, you need to also run the name through that database so that we don't recycle the bad nuts. And finally, the Bank of Ghana is also coming up with a policy which will ensure some audit of lifestyle of staff. As Dr. Asante mentioned, in the rural community, you see that some staff are showing a lot of opulence when it comes to financial issues. They are driving different cars. They are showing so much money, and you sit back and you watch their income, and you ask the question that, does their income support this? And so when we begin to roll out this lifestyle audit, then it will begin to trigger some red flags for investigation into the lifestyles of staff. These and many others that we are looking at, and we are open for more discussions and more collaboration with the other institutions so that together we can all fight this. And lastly, on the issue of sensitization and education for customers, we are also fully supporting that. And at the Bank of Ghana, we even do our own sensitization and educational campaigns across the country. And we encourage that, I mean, the education drive should be on various platforms and in different languages so that it goes far to reach other people. And so when we put all these things together, I'm sure we'll be able to see some reduction in the numbers that we are recording. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our time is running so fast, right? so maybe let's I'll ask some round of questions, one each for our panelists. Okay, so I see Kingsley, I'll give you the chance to ask a question, right? It's not yet time for question and answer, so please just hold on to your question. I'll give you the chance to ask a question. So Dr. Asante, right? Let's focus the conversation on the customer. What do you think what are some of the initiatives that you think has to be proposed to raise digital literacy among customers to reduce their vulnerability? Mr. John Iwa mentioned about education, public education. He spoke about the fact that there are some customers that will need their checkbook signed, and then they expect the staff of the banks to complete and then withdraw monies on their behalf. Beyond that example, what initiatives would you say have to be undertaken to raise awareness, especially when it comes to digital fraud? Awareness of customers when it comes to digital fraud. Mr. Asante, in case you are speaking, you're muted, so please unmute. Okay, so maybe let me give that question to Mr. Ewa. Mr. Ewa, if you can just touch on that for us briefly. So what initiatives are being proposed to raise digital literacy among customers to reduce their vulnerability to social engineering?
Yeah, so as community of banks, we are engaging in extensive public education. First, we are working through the Center for Financial Literacy Africa. The people do not have to be bank customers. I mean, any weaker link within the community is of concern to us. So the Center for Financial Literacy Africa, they are engaging in direct public education. They are going to the markets, to our churches, to our schools, educating the general public on the basic things that we have to do as users of financial products. And as banks, if you go to your ATM, you see, even on the radio, you hear every day banks saying, do not give your password. You are receiving text messages. A bank will not call you for your OTP. That's one-time PIN. A bank will not ask for your email address. We have it already. So we just need to intensify our public discourse. Make sure that we are very much in the face of the general public, getting them to understand that when it comes to financial literacy, it does not really matter who you are. You can be susceptible to fraudulent attacks. You just have to be aware and have your guards properly switched on. The education also goes to the banking staff. And I already talked about the certification program, just for them to renew their knowledge around some of the pitfalls and be able to educate customers who also approach us in our banking facilities on basic questions on how do I secure myself from fraudulent attacks. And I like the point that was made by our regulator, because it's something that we have also, as an association, raised, the staff lifestyle audit. And I remember more than, in fact, over 2 decades ago, I used to work in Standard Chartered and I bought a car. And I got an email from HR asking me, dear Mr. Ewa, we have observed that you have bought a new vehicle. Our records indicate that you have not taken a staff loan. Could you please let us know how you managed to finance this car? Banks should begin asking these questions. If people if an HR person from a bank attends your wedding, they are not there for the fun. They are there to see what you are spending on your wedding. If they are attending your funerals, your parties, they are not there just for a fun. They are there also working because they are auditing your lifestyle. When you go to the car park, they should be looking out for what kind of cars are our people driving. Is it commensurate with the compensation we are giving them? Once people begin to see that they cannot enjoy the proceeds from the crime, then the push to engage in it perhaps may be subsided in a way. So lifestyle audit is one critical component of the activities that as banks, we have to be more aggressive and committed to doing going forward. Aside the public education, getting everyone to understand that your PIN is PIN. There's a reason it starts with P, personal. So if you write it in your diary, it doesn't become personal anymore. If you write it on a notepad and stick it on your fridge, it is no longer personal. And when it comes to fraud, it knows no bounds. Your fraudster may be the next person sitting by you in church, or your person sitting with you at the dinner table at home. We have seen husbands defrauding their wives and wives defrauding their husbands in one way or the other because of proximity and familiarity. They get to know each other's, the details, and they have used it to their disadvantage. So if it is personal, it is personal. You do not share it. And these kind of little tips, we cannot stop talking about them. We just have to continuously be in the face of the customer. Presently, we are even working in a collaborative effort with the mobile operators, the dummies, and the PSPs and the fintechs. We are working on a project on an aggressive and extensive public education, which will go and touch on every aspect of the frauds that we have been experiencing, together with having it executed in most of the common languages that we have in the country. We can't say we have arrived. It is an ongoing process, and we can only do more to ensure that our customers can transact safely and securely on our platforms.
Thank you, Mr. Ewa. Because of time, I'll just go quickly. So let's look at regulatory response. Dr. Asante, if you can unmute yourself now, I want you to touch on in 2 minutes how regulators can balance enforcement of regulations with providing support to institutions for compliance. Sometimes you have to balance both. So can you please touch on that for us? How regulators, so ARB, Apex Bank, Bank of Ghana, for instance, how can they balance enforcement of regulations with supporting banks, or institutions to comply? Are you able to unmute? Okay, so maybe Eric, if you can touch on that. I think Dr. Asante is still struggling to unmute. Eric, if you can just touch on that for us quickly, please, in 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Julius. So in the form of enforcement, we have issued this directive that banks are required to submit fraud incident report to us as and when it happens. Now, the essence of this is to be able to know what is happening in the industry, and also to be able to understand the modus operandi of this fraud. So we can also, if there's a need, we can immediately alert the other institutions to be on the guard. Now, this report also helps us to put together the annual report, which we are discussing now. And when we realize that an incident had occurred in your institution and is not reported, then we penalize you, or we sanction you. And so the Bank of Ghana carries out this enforcement mechanism. And also, we are reviewing our AML guideline, and in the AML guideline, we are now including fraud management. And so we have various sections in the guideline which we can use to enforce compliance in fraud. Aside that, in terms of support, we are always engaging with the banks, the SDIs, and other relevant stakeholders, and to discuss the challenges and then also make appropriate recommendations. We are even engaging the judicial service, because there has been some complaints in the past that the judicial process, when it comes to prosecution of a staff, usually takes very long, and sometimes the banks they get tired of the process and then they back out. So we are in talk with the judicial service so we can see how best these prosecutions can be fast-tracked, so that the banks will get the process done quickly, and then they can move on to their businesses. So these are the support that we give to the banks, SDIs, and then the other stakeholders to help fight the fraud. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think based on what you've said, is doing quite a lot, but encourage the BOG to continue, to establish a very good handshake between regulation and support for financial institutions in compliance. So maybe let me come to you quickly, right? So now we are looking at, I want us to look at digital risk exposure. So that's where the question is going to come from. So you spoke extensively about mobile money fraud, I think, in Nigeria, right? So with the rise in mobile money fraud, and we also have similar situations here in Ghana as well, digital lending, crypto. How are fraudsters exploiting this technology? Can you throw a bit more light on that for us? How are fraudsters exploiting these digital channels in perpetuating their fraud? Sharon.
Okay, thank you very much, Julius. So I think when you look at the mobile landscape, I think from a Nigerian perspective, it's really broken down into, I would say, maybe 3 license types. You have the mobile money, you have the agency banking, and you also have the payment service banks. And largely, a lot of this, I would say, fintechs who operate within this space, they operate through what we'll call their apps, their banking apps, and through agents, quite a number of agents through, we call them POS agents. And a lot of the fraud you see in that space is really, I think from a policy perspective, what the CBN has also tried to do is to kind of put some limit on the transactions that are called within that space. So that does help with, even when there's a fraud case, the loss amount that you record, right? But what you see a lot is people maybe taking over, account takeover from this particular space. You also see instances where if there is not enough coordination between the telcos and the banks, you see that people can abuse, that gap in communication where people can have multiple accounts. There was a time where, because a lot of mobile money accounts are linked to numbers, people do SIM swaps. I recall that I tried to do a SIM swap once, and I think my wife and I were sharing that number, and the customer service rep told me that they don't care about joint numbers anymore. That each person has to come and claim their number, because they've seen instances where wives have gone to say, oh, I'm doing this on behalf of my husband, and then clean out their accounts, because again, those account numbers are linked to that. Then you do see a lot of again, phishing, people asking for through fake websites, fake accounts, fake websites, and fake apps. People provide their details, and you see a lot of that fraud also just being perpetrated. But what I do, wanted to just notice, and it maybe ties to some of the questions, the earlier question you asked, is how to protect the customer. There is the role of the regulator from a policy perspective. And I think one of the things that's been done in Nigeria is, when you look at the literacy level of the customer using a product, you have to mandate and enforce at a policy level that certain gaps cannot be allowed. So, for example, in Nigeria, touchless payments are not allowed because it's a major gap for that literacy level. Everybody, you must either use your card, you must be present, or you must use a PIN. There must at least be 2 things that is, personal to you for every transaction to happen. And then I think if you also look at what is happening in the UK right now, where banks know the controls they need to put in place to prevent a number of this. But again, there's that battle. There's always that battle in the bank or financial institutions view from a cost perspective to say, do we want to extend this cost to actually hire more people to ensure that maker, checker controls, reconciliations are done? Do we want to spend more on technology, right, to prevent abuse of our systems? But again, because of the pressures of budgets and where money has to go to, sometimes these conversations are not they're not made in favor of the customer. So what the UK has done is to say that for every, they've gone to the UK said, when a fraud happens and they believe that a bank could have prevented this, right? Then they would find that bank. They would make sure that they get the money back to the customer. So essentially, the money you're trying not to spend, you end up spending maybe 2 times that. And that kind of makes governance and the leadership of a bank take fraud prevention controls more seriously.
Thank you very much, Sheung. Thank you so much. So maybe at this point, let me just go into the chat because of time to read some of the questions that attendees have. So I have a question here from Agbenya Adote. We all agree that humans continue to be the weakest cyber link. What do you think executive management should be primarily and continuously be investing in to ensure sustained cyber awareness to minimize fraud? What do you think executive management should primarily and continuously be investing in to ensure sustained cyber awareness, awareness to minimize fraud? So this question is to our panelists. Please, whoever wants to that, may raise his hand and then. Dr.
Okay.
Asante, are you speaking? Are you speaking?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So I'm back now. So let me just share some few thoughts of the earlier question, and then I'll move into that of the current chart that someone.
So Dr. Asante, okay, so maybe if you can share those thoughts quickly and then respond to this question for us, if you may, please.
Okay, so basically what is required here from our space when it comes to ARB Apex Bank, especially from the angle of enforcing regulation. We continue to conduct our on-site inspections, consistent inspections, to ensure that we are able to identify the lapses within the fraud area and then deal with it. Again, we continue to provide there should be consistent fraud training, whether it's on webinar or face-to-face, to enhance the knowledge around the regulation space. And then the third one is slightly also within the policy tightening of controls, which my colleague was talking. But one thing that we always draw attention to is to keep a fraud register. The need to have a fraud register helps us to track incidents so that we can have targeted approaches in resolutions, because they will give you the trend, and the trend will help to focus on what to do. Now, when it comes to the chart that the comment that someone made in the chat, it's largely about building the capacities of the executive management. The tone at the top is the crucial matter, making people in management and the board become very much aware about their responsibilities and putting the subject matter as a critical matter on the agenda. That is to say, at the executive management level, at the board level, there should be separate focused discussions on fraud. There should be specific responsible people at management of the board whose task is to drive resolutions of fraud. If it is left largely to those in the normal work, you might not get the kind of attention that it needs. So management and board should drive it, and to be a subject matter at all their meetings to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. All right, so I see, okay, so there's a comment that the most effective step from, okay, I've already read that. So maybe let me give the chance to one person to speak, to be unmuted and speak. I see Kingsley. Kingsley, are you able to unmute and speak? Michael, kindly unmute Kingsley so that he can ask this question. Kingsley, I see Kingsley.
Mensah.
A second.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, Kingsley Mensah. Please, you are muted. Go ahead, please.
All right, good afternoon, sir. And
good afternoon. Please go ahead.
And good afternoon to all of us. I want to say thank you so much for this program that you have put together for us to build our capacity in the area of fraud. However, there's one challenging issue that I want to also bring to the fore, which has to do with the auditing reports of these banks. Now, how do we value the internal auditor's report? The last speaker just mentioned about keeping a fraud register. How do you determine to arrest fraud and decide to eliminate your internal auditor? Decide to, as it were, go to bed with audit committee in order for your internal auditor's report to be rubbish, for you to have your way as management. How prepared are we? How prepared are we to value the external auditor's reports with regards to some of these issues, so that the fraud that all of us are trying to combat will be able to do it in a more appropriate manner? Talking about this, Mr. Moderator, I would like to point on the disclosure of the dormant account. When the banks are preparing their financial statement, are they able to disclose these dormant accounts and the balances that are in there, and whether they are also able to link up with the next of kins, the beneficiaries of this account, for them to know that there was some kind of an account prepared in the name of Mr. Osimosi for so long a time. We've not seen Mr. Osimosi around, so we want to, as it were, inform you to also come to the bank, so that if there's any kind of discussion, can the banks do that, so that these kind of staff fraud in this area can be minimized? Thank you so much, Chair, for my submission.
Okay, thank you very much, Kingsley. All right, so Kingsley's first point, I think, was a submission. The second one is a question. So his question is on the dormant account. So should I give that chance, either Eric or Ms. Ewa, to respond to that?
Yes, this is John Ewa. Yes, the question on dormant accounts, there are very clear guidelines on how banks should operate a dormant account. And next of kin per se is not entitled to the balance in a dormant account. So you have to go through the normal process that is established, and banks have been publishing it. The central bank has been educating on it. If an account goes inactive for a period, not working for a period, it goes into inactive, and from inactive, after a certain period, it becomes dormant, and there are reporting requirements. The names are being published in the newspapers, so that even family members who care to know, once they go through the list and they see a name of a family member, they can alert whoever in the family. If the person has passed on or is maybe incapacitated, that information can come to the bank. But once the funds are in dormant and the timeline elapses and it goes to Bank of Ghana, you can make a request to your bank, but we will also make a request on Bank of Ghana once we validate you and we get the payment back to you. But I know that there are strict controls on inactive accounts and dormant accounts. There are clear audit trail on who can and cannot go on these accounts. And as far as I know, the banks have these systems in place. If you go on in an inactive account to undertake any activity, your ID and everything is imprinted there, and whatever happens, it is very easy to trace it back to who potentially may have caused the trouble. But as it all goes back to the education that we've talked about, that we need to get our customers well informed. All these directives are there, but how are we running audit as a community of banks, pushing, just not sending notices, but also undertaking public education to get people to understand that when these lists are published and your accounts are all active, perhaps in your free time, you can just glance through. If you know of a family member's name which happens to be in the list, you can alert the family within the family tree who the best person is to talk to about it. That person will come to the bank, and there are processes and forms that you fill, and then money can be released back to who the beneficial owner actually is.
All right, Mr. Watt, thank you very much. So let's so Kingsley Esel, you can ask your question quickly in 30 seconds. Michael, kindly unmute Kingsley to ask his question. Kingsley Esel.
Yes, many thanks,
Okay.
moderator, for the opportunity. Brilliant, insightful presentations. I'm Kingsley, like you mentioned. I work with UBA. If I'm correct, the discussion has been on staff and system-related fraud. But I am looking at the customer onboarding process. If you look into Nigeria, for instance, you realize that fintechs like MoneyPoint, Flutterwave, Paystack, etc., have unpacked the customer onboarding process and made it so simple. And yet issues of fraud are so minimal in their system. I could be wrong, but at least that is how I see it. Now, these fintechs are taking over banking in Nigeria, and the flows are moving to them, while traditional banks are still stuck to the old ways of onboarding customers. And yet, issues of fraud are more pervasive in these traditional banks. Can we ever have a system which will ensure or enable easy customer onboarding within our traditional banks while maintaining effective controls to minimize the incidence of fraud?
All right. So Kingsley, thank you very much. So which of our panelists will want to take that question? Sean, do you want to give it a go?
Okay. Yes, thanks a lot. So I think maybe I would say that there's still a lot of fraud within the fintech space in Nigeria. And if you ask me, I will even say that maybe up until recently, that has been the weakest link within the space. And a lot of that is also maybe is due to the point you made around the efficiency of the KYC process. It comes with its benefits, but it also comes with a lot of risk. I think the efficacy of that process is usually is a direct proportion to the strength of an identity system that a country has. So I know earlier on we talked about the Ghana card, right? In Nigeria, we have the NIN and the BVN. So there's been a lot of cleaning up of that data right now so that we know who the customers are, and onboarding is much more seamless. So again, the way I view it is this: the fraudsters, it's one thing to carry out the fraud. It's another thing to monetize the fraud, right? They are always going to flow to where monetization is easy, because that's the whole essence of the fraud in that sense. So what I would say is the traditional banks, they need to tighten, monetization. It's got to be, and that could be policy driven, where, for example, in Nigeria now, it's very difficult to take cash out of the bank. It's extremely difficult. It's got to be electronic. In some ways, there are limits to it. So even if you do carry out a material fraud, you will find out that it's very hard to monetize it within the banking space. So from a policy perspective, that would help. And also, I think overall, the industry would need to share data. Data sharing, I don't think I would say Africa in general, we don't share data. But if we do share data on fraud, there are so many data touch points on a fraudster that if you run it through the entire banking system, somebody carries out fraud in a bank A today, maybe that person has a similar phone number, a similar address in bank B, or maybe that person has even done transactions with customers in bank B. All those are valid data points that we need to, as an industry, continue to, proactively find a way to prevent fraud. There's this example I like to use. If for those of us who are car enthusiasts, I know you've heard about Tesla, and the Tesla self-driving cars. There was one particular incident where just before an accident happened, the Tesla car was already warning the driver because there were so many data touch points, so many cameras around. It could say, oh, there's an accident just about to happen, and then it automatically stopped the car from going on at the speed, and then preventing the car from getting involved in the accident. So I think that's where we need to get to as a financial system, where we take so many data touch points, we take all the different fraud incidents that are happening, we plug them into something that, it's a pattern. It's always a pattern, right? And we begin to see those fraud incidents before they happen. We begin to see those staff who have a tendency to commit fraud, right? Even before they do it, and then we can start reducing it. I think monetization is also one critical area. Once we are able to reduce monetization, I think it will also reduce fraud on the long run.
Okay, thank you very much, Ariza. If you can make your quick point, I think our time is up. If you can make your quick point quickly.
Okay, thank you, Julius.
And I'll take a final remark, maybe a quick remark from Prof. Bawili as well, immediately after you. He has not spoken during this round, so okay. Ariza, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also add to it that the operationalization of the Open Banking Directive can be a game changer for addressing such issues as well. Because when all the regulated financial institutions, the fintechs, the SDIs are able to securely share verified customer information, it should help, and it will help to reduce some of this duplicate or inconsistent KYC records that we are currently facing. And to add to it, when we also add monitoring, continuous or enhanced monitoring on some of these levels, it will greatly reduce the challenges that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof.
Yes, bro. Thank you. So just to pick up on one point someone made in the conversation, we need to, if we have lost this generation, we mustn't lose the next generation. Sometimes I tell my colleagues that I'm not too sure whether the doctors we are training today, the bankers we are training today would be able to take care of our pension money. So those of us who are currently working, what is the level of morality? What's the level of ethics of the next generation of bankers? And will we be safe? Would our pensions be safe with them? What that tells us is that whilst we are busy today trying to prevent fraud, we must invest in preventing fraud in the future. And that means we need to take care of the younger generation. And one of us talked about how to go down to primary schools and educate and all of that. So that's something that I think we have to do very carefully. And as I said, I am a crusader now, and so I intend to do a lot of that. Just a quick one to laugh about. Mr. John Ewa is noted, it's been quoted by City FM online of saying that almost 70% of doctors take loans, flee Ghana without paying. And then I just scrolled down the comment section, and then somebody says he should also tell us if he bought his car without a loan. And then somebody says, as long as the politicians are not paying their loans, I don't think they should also pay their loans. Now you get people endorsing wrong. If you employ one of these persons to be in your bank to work for you and to handle me, you know that it is a lost cost. And so I think that these conversations are fine. And thank you, KPMG, for inviting me to this. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Bawili. Okay, so maybe a last one for Eric. Eric, maybe as you come in, there's a question that is directly to Bank of Ghana. So Amano says that can the process to reimburse victims of fraud be outlined? What regulations dictate regarding reimbursement? And is it mandatory for insurance policies to be in place to reimburse victims? What remedies are available to a victim of fraud where the customer is dissatisfied with the outcome, and what role does BOG play? So maybe you can just wrap up with that question as well quickly, maybe in 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Julius. I will just come into that. So at the Bank of Ghana, we have a customer recourse mechanism. So in relation to the remedies. So if you are not satisfied with your bank, and when you have a complaint, you could write to the Bank of Ghana, and the Bank of Ghana will pick it up with the bank and then resolve that issue. There's this question that I just wanted to touch briefly on. How do you handle fraud incidents committed by the CEO's relatives or the CEO himself in your bank with the board worshiping the CEO? I mean, all banks and SDIs have a whistleblowing policy. So when you see such an incident and you are not able to handle it at your level, quickly raise that concern and submit it to the Bank of Ghana, and we'll pick it from there. Thank you.
Thank you very, 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 very much, Eric. And I think we've had a very, very fruitful and insightful, a conversation. We couldn't have done this without you, wonderful, participants. You made it very early this morning to join us. And of course, our panelists, Mr. John Lewa, Eric Bozikabeyo, Dr. Asante, Professor Justice Bawele, Teacher Bawele himself, Areza David, and of course our own Oluwaseun Odeku. We really thank you all, for making time, for us this morning. And we hope that the conversations that we've started, we'll continue in the corridors. Let's continue to keep our gas alert. Let's continue, especially from the GAB and then the Bank of Ghana side, continue to engage the ecosystem and the stakeholders so that we see how best we can work at safeguarding our financial system to protect the customers that we serve. At this juncture, unfortunately, the time has come so quickly. We wish you all the best. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the rest of your day. Do have a great and a wonderful day. We see you again very soon. So look out for another flyer from KPMG and the GAB. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much, Julius. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.
ESG strategy. The world has changed, and it's not just because of COVID. Consumers and employees have increasingly different expectations of the world and the businesses they buy from and work for. Your shareholders and lenders are under pressure from regulators and the market to prove that they're acting responsibly and investing sustainably. All will be making choices about which organisations they work with. So will yours be one of them? Each stakeholder looks at your business through their own lens, and this is your opportunity to choose what's behind it. What is your impact on our planet? What do you contribute to the communities you operate in? And how do you conduct yourself? ESG isn't something you do, it's everything you do, and how you do it. It's your license to operate, and it's your opportunity to lead. Your ESG strategy must be authentic, embedded in your business. Your ESG narrative looks right across your business and tells that story to the world. And your ESG metrics help people compare you with others, often via a rating. You'll want to consider how you conduct yourself as an organisation and look to the ethics throughout your supply chain. What part do you play in the community? Is your business inclusive? Are you well governed? And is your leadership diverse and set up to hold the business to account? Look at the impacts of climate change, at the natural resources you consume and the waste you produce. Do you pay fair taxes? Treat your customers and suppliers ethically? And do your employees have safe, fair working conditions, and could they speak out if they see something wrong? Understand where you're strong and can be proud. And know where you're vulnerable and then have a plan to make it better. People will expect you to set clear targets and have the data to measure your progress and report it to the world. They'll want the assurance that what's behind the curtain supports your performance and won't let you down. Your metrics will encourage investment and your narrative will talk to your stakeholders. When you're done, you'll have a resilient business set to thrive in the new reality. And you'll be playing your part to make the world a more sustainable, fairer, and better place for everyone. It's the right thing to do. The world has changed, and it's not just because of COVID.
Our choices shape our futures. The future of businesses, economies, careers, and our world. Insights illuminate better choices, allowing us to see differently and do more. At KPMG, we know insights reveal new opportunities. With us, you have the people and technologies to uncover insights and turn them into action, so you can innovate and transform, so trust can grow, and a more sustainable future becomes possible. When we act on insight, with the right people by our side, opportunity is everywhere. Let insights reveal new opportunities. Our choices shape our futures.